This is the stock for the Mannlicher 1888/90 I ordered from Royal Tiger Imports. I have previous videos on cleaning the barreled action in the bore, so if you haven't seen those, go check them out. In this video I'm going to be tackling the stock. First impression is that it's very light. The Labor Day sale when I bought mine, I think they sold over 100 rifles, and people were posting theirs on YouTube, Reddit, forums, and other places. Most of them have very dark stocks, some of them almost black. Not a lot of them look like mine here. It's very dry, so I'm wondering what will happen when I get some oil on it, if it'll darken up some. Some of the others also have markings on the stock, like AOI, which is an Italian East Africa marking. As you can see, mine doesn't have anything. Also, it almost looks like the wood is shrunken. Some of them I saw, it looks like the metal parts are proud of the wood, and some of them aren't. Whether that's a result of wear, dryness of the wood, or human intervention like sanding, I'm not really sure. Probably all three of those things. There are some cracks in the stock, nothing major though, and I tried prying this one open, but it wouldn't budge. I might just leave these as is since I'm not going to be shooting this rifle often with the condition that it's in. If you see my bore cleaning video, you know what I mean. So the first order of business is to remove the leftover metal parts. The rear sling swivel is a little bit loose, so I'll go ahead and take it out. Now if you own a lot of milsurps, you know that the worst spot on any given rifle is usually the butt plate. This one's been obviously cleaned up by the Ethiopian wire wheel, but there's quite a bit of wear on the screw heads deforming the slots. I have the stock in the vise to get a lot of leverage and downward pressure on the screwdriver to make sure it doesn't slip out. I'll just unscrew each of these one turn. Then I'll get the hacksaw out to deepen the slot just a little bit. I have them unscrewed just to avoid cutting into the butt plate. And with that, I should be able to get a much better bite with the screwdriver. Then I can remove them all the way along with the butt plate. The inside of the stock really isn't all that bad. Just a bit of dried grease, like I removed from the barreled action, but much less of it. I'm just spraying some ballistol and brushing it away. I'll move on now to the outside of the stock, but first I need a place to put it, so I'll have this piece of scrap wood clamped to the workbench. Just going to test if the stock fits and balances well enough. For oil, I'm using boiled linseed oil. It's very forgiving to apply and cheap, and a dried out stock like this just needs some sort of oil to rehydrate itself. I'm not expecting a drastic color change, but it should just get a little bit darker. I'm just going to tip the can over to get a little bit of boiled linseed oil on a paper towel and then wipe it on the stock. You can see the dirt coming off. When this paper towel gets too dirty, I'll fold it over and start with a fresh spot. You may see others who suggest dousing a stock in oil or pouring it directly on the wood, but I like to use just a little bit at a time. If you let the oil stay too long on the surface of the stock, doesn't dry properly and results in a sticky, gummy finish. And that's why I do just a little bit at a time. I'll come back in a few minutes and wipe off any excess. I like to do a few light coats over one or two heavy coats. And finally, don't forget to properly dispose of your rags, as balled up rags can spontaneously combust as they dry and create heat. I like to lay mine outside to dry in the sun. This is the result of just 2 coats of oil. I really thought that it would take more oil than that, but sometimes you're surprised at how much or how little it takes. I'm going to get started reassembling the rifle now. First is the safety screw. I haven't gotten the part in yet, so I'll just put the screw in just like it was when I received the rifle. I'll follow that up with the bolt release, which is a bit difficult to get aligned. The spring and its screw. But before I tighten that all the way, I almost forget about the pivot screw for the bolt release. I'll just get that in and then tighten the other one. Next is the trigger. I used a lot of oil on the pivot point between the trigger and the sear to hopefully try to improve the feel of it. I'll just press down lightly on the sear spring and slide the pin in place. I'm not sure if mine is loose or they're all like this. Just something to be aware of when taking these apart. You don't want to take the stock off and the next thing you know you've lost your trigger pin. Now to the rear sight. The side plates have this hook that slides into a notch on the original rear sight base. That keeps the rear section attached. The sight leaf goes in from the front. I'll pinch the adjustment levers to get it in. And slide the screw in. If you remember my disassembly video, the left side plate is stripped, so that's something to keep an eye on if it later becomes a problem, and this screw has trouble staying in. Now I'll turn the barrel to action over and drop on the stock. Followed by the magazine and trigger guard. And then I'll tighten the two action screws. Next up are the three barrel bands. The rear band has a captive screw, and the other two have separate screws holding them in place. The rear and middle bands are a bit loose, but at least they're not going to be moving. And then I'll put back on the two stock pieces that I took off earlier, starting with the sling swivel. Anytime I have a screw going into wood, I like to use a little bit of paste wax. I'll get some on the threads. I find this helps them go into the wood easier, just like how I use a drop of oil on all screws going into metal. I'll do the same with the butt plate and the two large screws. The last thing to go in is the bolt. I'm going to oil this very well, as the action was very stiff when I first got this rifle. Again, hoping that it's easier than before, just like I am with the trigger. I still haven't quite gotten the hang of locking the cocking piece back, so it took a couple tries to get it back in. Once the wedge sits on top of the receiver extension, I can relieve pressure as that holds the wedge up. And then the bolt slides forward into the rifle. And with the rifle all together, I can take it off the workbench and try out the action. I'm trying to be forceful with it, but even then I still have some times where it doesn't go forward all the way. I'll try out the trigger now. And that's a bit better, especially the reset. I think the trigger design isn't the best with the wide flat spring, so it's not really a fair comparison to, say, a Mauser with a coil trigger spring. I'm just going to work the action a bit more. I'm going to end the video here. It's been a fun process checking out just what I received, especially a rifle I'm unfamiliar with. Next step is to load some rounds and take it to the range. Look out for that video in the future. Thanks for watching.